Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this special interview focused on the recent development in Mongolia, which has ushered in a new cooperative legislation in June 2021, following years of successful lobbying and advocacy for an enabling legal and policy environment for the development of cooperatives in all sectors. The interview is brought to you by the ICA Cooperative Law Committee and Cooperative News, and the organizers wish to thank ICA Asia and Pacific for their support. The interview was carried out by Anne Apps, who represents ICA Asia and Pacific at the Cooperative Law Committee. She was previously employed as a solicitor in New South Wales, where she practiced in the areas of civil litigation, property, and commercial law. She is actively engaged in the promotion of cooperative education in the Australian tertiary sector. She is also a member of Cooperative Association, which is a community of international cooperative lawyers based in Luxembourg. And she's currently enrolled as a PhD student at University of Newcastle. Her thesis topic is "Why Cannot We Cooperate? The Impact of Law and Regulatory Policy on the Development and Growth of Cooperative Enterprise in Australia," and teaches contract law to students in the Bachelor of Laws and Juris Doctor programs, Cooperative Law and Governance in Postgraduate MBA program. Our guest today is Altantuya, who serves as the Vice President of the National Association of Mongolian Agricultural Cooperatives, or NAMAC, which is a non-governmental organization that unites, develops, and promotes cooperatives in the country. It plays a significant role in increasing agricultural production efficiency, improving living standard of rural population, and developing educational and cultural welfare. It is also noteworthy to remind our viewers and listeners that the request for the 2012 International Year of Cooperatives was officially made to the UN General Assembly by the Mongolian government in 2009. Various stakeholders of the Mongolian cooperative movement, including NAMAC, have played a crucial role in bringing in this new law, the intentions and details of which we're about to find out.
Thank you so much, Santosh, and welcome, Altantuya. We're absolutely delighted to have this chance to interview you tonight. I'm sure that the audience is very keen to learn about cooperative law and the cooperative movement in Mongolia. We want to hear about those law reforms, but we also want a little background to those law reforms. So before we begin our discussion about the cooperative law in Mongolia, I've got two preliminary questions, and I'm hoping that you might indulge me. Firstly, very few of our listeners will have ever traveled to Mongolia. I would love to go to Mongolia. It's on my list. So hopefully one day I can come and visit. But I'm hoping that for the benefit of the audience, the listeners tonight, that you might describe your country a little bit so that we can have a verbal picture of the landscape and the people and the lifestyle in Mongolia. And of course, to hear a little bit about the influence of co-ops on that lifestyle. And my second request, so you can go straight from one question to the other, is a little bit about your own story, the history of your involvement with co-ops and the co-op movement in Mongolia, and how you firstly became involved in this law reform process. So thank you very much, Altantuya.
Okay, thank you very much. And it's my pleasure to be here and to be interviewed by Ms. Apps and talk about my country and the law reform is happening here. So first of all, Mongolia is a small country and we neighbor only with Russia and China, to the north with Russia and to the south with China. So we are kind of a sandwich between two large countries. But by the size of the land, Mongolia is a not small country. So by the land size, we are 19th in the world. So it's a huge land, but by the population, we are one of the smallest. So we have only 3.3 million population in this big land, which is around 1.5 million square kilometers. So it's a huge land and very small population. And Mongolia is very popular for our nomadic lifestyle. So still people follow nomadic and semi-nomadic ways of life. So nomadic families, they are the carriers of our culture, of our traditions. So we respect and mainly the agriculture of Mongolia is due to the harsh very cold climate is the livestock breeding. So Mongolia has around 70 million heads of livestock. So we have sheep, goats, cattle, horses. Horses are very important. And then also we have camels. So we have this two-humped Bactrian camel. So, and Mongolia is very popular for its Gobi Desert, which lays in the south of the country. So where the dinosaurs' bones are found. So it's a very popular destination for the tourists. And to the west, we have this Altai mountain, which is the very high mountains. And in the Altai mountains, we have many of our ethnic groups living. So we have many, many different ethnic groups, but the majority of the people is a population is a half people, but also we have Kazakhs and the other ethnic groups. So everybody, when they think about Mongolia, is the steppe. It's a vast territory, eternal blue sky, and nomadic people still horse riding. So it's true until now. So many nomadic people, they use horse as a transportation. But now, you know, the motorbikes and car is taking over the duty of the horses. But horse racing is a very, very popular type of the sport in Mongolia. So we have our traditional horse racing. And one of the very unique features is still Mongolians, we live in a ger. Ger is the felt tent, and many people know it as a yurt, but I think yurt is the more Russian name. But in Mongolian, we call it ger. So nomadic families, they live in a ger, which is very easy to carry, very easy to put up and take it off as well. So you just fold everything, you move to the next destination, you put it back, and your house is ready. So this is all about Mongolia, and it's a landlocked country, second largest landlocked country after Kazakhstan. So we don't have access to the sea. And it's an advantage and disadvantage, of course, and huge steps. So many tourists just came here to travel the abandoned land, which is naturally very beautiful, untouched. Personally, I have been with the cooperative movement for more than a decade. So I joined in my 20s the National Association of Mongolian Agricultural Cooperatives as a international relations staff. So I can speak Russian and English, and I worked there. I started my journey in the cooperative movement as an international personnel, and then later I became kind of in love with the cooperative movement, what cooperative movement is and what is cooperative can do for the people and how a cooperative can build a better world. It's kind of interested me. So I started to learn more about cooperatives. So I took short courses in the country and also abroad. So I went to Japan, India, China, and Malaysia to learn the cooperative structure and movement of that countries. And during this time, I kind of made my career. So I promoted as the head of the International Cooperation Division. And then in 2012, when I still was very young, I was elected as a vice president of the National Association of Mongolian Agricultural Cooperatives. And last year, same time, I was elected as a vice chair of Mongolian Cooperative Alliance. So I'm doing kind of working in two associations, but both in the same movement. So it's easy for me. So it's a, you know that Mongolian National Cooperative Alliance, we are working more on the consolidation of the voices of the different sector cooperatives and advocating for the common interests and rights. But for the agricultural cooperatives, we mainly working for the rural development and protecting the interests and rights of the farmers and herders. So this is how I started and continued my journey in the cooperative movement of Mongolia. And I've been involved with the reform of the legal law of cooperatives since 2013. But you know that current just passed law, the draft was developed back in 2007, but we were doing advocating, lobbying, and it was a long journey for us to submit it to the Parliament of Mongolia. And only in 2019 we could do it. So as a vice chair of the National Association of Mongolian Agricultural Cooperatives, I was a part of the working group to prepare the draft, and that's how involved with the legal reform.
Thank you so much, Altantuya. That's great. We know we have a bit of a vision now of the landscape and the people, and we're very glad to hear that you fell in love with cooperatives, because it's something that it gets into your blood, and it's great to hear that you have that passion in your blood for co-ops. So just to give us a bit of an idea before we start talking about the law reform, can you explain a little bit about cooperatives in Mongolia? So what sort of co-ops are very common? What sort of sectors do they exist in? Are some sectors much stronger than other sectors, and so on? And most importantly, what were some of the problems that they were facing that made the movement think it was time for law reform?
Yeah, so currently in Mongolia, we have around 4,600 cooperatives registered, but it's registered, and some of them they're working sustainably and some of them on and off. So, you know, it depends on the cooperative business type. And most of the cooperatives, they are in service. It's around 34% of the all registered cooperatives, they are in the service sector. 30.8% is in agriculture sector. So, and most of the largest cooperatives, they are also in the agriculture sector. So mainly it's, as Mongolia is the livestock breeding country, mainly it's a herders cooperatives. And also the credit cooperatives, we call it savings and credit cooperatives. Their number is not big, but membership is big. So they are growing sector in the cooperative movement. And of course, they also face some difficulties. And then now they have their own law to regulate only these financial cooperatives separately than the other sector cooperatives. And their membership is growing. And also these savings and credit cooperatives, they should have a special license from the Financial Regulatory Commission of Mongolia, because, you know, this financial service is a very sensitive issue. And especially when people put their money as a savings, it's a very sensitive. That's why government is closely monitors and regulates the activities of the savings and credit cooperatives. For the other cooperatives, we have just one cooperative law. So mainly cooperatives are in agriculture sector, the largest ones. In the service sector, the number of the cooperatives high, but membership-wise, they're small. So less than 50 members, it's a very common. Some of them, it's only 9-10 members. But herders cooperatives, they're bigger. The smallest is around 80 to 100 members and over. So membership-wise, I can say that membership-wise and business-wise, I can say that agricultural cooperatives and saving and credit cooperatives, they're the largest sectors developed in Mongolia.
So you've just mentioned that there's a special law for financial cooperatives, and another law which covers all other types of cooperatives, whether they're agricultural or consumer co-ops.
Yes.
So this recent law reform, was it only for that other law, or was there law reform for the savings and loans cooperatives as well? Or was it only just?
Yeah, the basic law to regulate the cooperative sector is the law on cooperatives of Mongolia. So this financial savings and credit cooperatives, they also, the base is this main law, and then based on that, they drafted their savings and credit cooperative law. And also now they want some amendments and reforms in their legal environment as well, based on that newly passed law. So, but they're quite independent, you know.
Okay.
And then their services are, of course, principles are same, but services, they cover quite large number of the population. So they really need this separate regulation. And especially because they have this special license, so they really need some different legislation for them to regulate.
So the new law that's came in June this year, is that correct? Was it
May.
June?
Yeah, it passed
in
in May and enforced from June.
So can you give me just a broad brush idea of some of the big changes to the law? Like, was it a complete rewrite of the old law, or was it a tweaking, a fixing up of the old law, or is it quite different?
It's a fixing up of the old law. So we also kept a lot of provisions from the old law, but some provisions, they made more clear the regulations or more detailed, because, you know, during this law was passed in 1995. So during these years, looking at the cooperative development and what challenges they face legally, then we tried to add and fix more to the existing law. So it's more based on that existing law, but many chapters are added. So the main changes is, of course, because it was passed in quite a couple of years ago. So the first changes, we put the terminology of the used in the law. For example, what is the reserve fund? So we really have a description of that reserve fund. So to change this one, we also adjusted it to the taxation law of Mongolia, because taxation law of the Mongolia was changed since 2020. So like for the reserve fund, we in the previous law used to have reserve fund, but current taxation law says it's a risk fund. So we have changed this, and we explained in the terminology part what is the risk fund and how it can be formed and where it can be used. So that kind of descriptions done in the law. So it's the first time. So what is the services to the members, and what is the what is it called, pay, debit, or sorry to say it in English, but a lot of things. Yeah, we tried to clarify in the terminology part, where the cooperative management and cooperative members as well have some doubt. So we try to make it clear how cooperatives should pay for the services to the members if they used any services from its own members. So it can be paid in kind or added to the share, or it can be paid in cash, or how cooperative can pay to the members to selling their products or marketing, channeling their products through the cooperative. So that kind of definitions and descriptions are in the law. So it made also more clear for the, not only for the cooperative members and management, it's also should be clear for the tax office as well. because when they deduct the tax, they should know that which is the cooperative income earning business and which is a non-income earning business. So we try to make it clear. Otherwise, for all the revenue which is cooperative is earning, the taxation office is eager to put some taxes. So we tried to differentiate that the cooperative payment to the members, it should be tax exempt because it's not the cooperative income, it's a member's income. So members should be taxed, not the cooperative. But at the moment, the tax office, they don't defer this difference, and then they just put tax. So we're trying to also to make it clear for the government authorities which deal with the cooperative. So, and that is a big also a success of our law. So we tried to define the cooperative specific features. And also in the law, you know that looking at the high cooperative growth in the different countries, so government support is very important. So we also added one new chapter that what is the rights and responsibilities of the government, and also what is the rights and responsibilities of the local authorities as well, because cooperatives mainly they operate in the local area, in the rural area. So what can the village governor can do to promote cooperatives, or how they can support, or how they can implement the government different legal papers and resolutions and regulations. So that chapter was very new. And then we also put the new chapter on the cooperative associations. So any cooperative sector can voluntarily establish its association. So we really want that all cooperatives will be member of the sector associations. And that's how the cooperatives can grow together. They can join their voices together, and also they can know that management information system will be proper. So then the government will know where the cooperatives need assistance and where their growth is better. So exchange some good practices. So that's why we added also a chapter on the cooperative associations and gave some rights and responsibilities as well. So the main responsibility of the cooperative associations is to give the continuous training to the members on the cooperative development, and also to assist cooperatives to grow. So that's a new, but the others is just the fixing, touching up, and adding more regulations.
A couple of things I'm thinking that come out of what you were talking about. The first was the taxation or accounting, or both the taxation and the accounting issue. And a lot of that problem is, not just a problem in Mongolia, but a problem in other countries as well. So it's interesting to think about. Do you feel that in the process of putting through the law reform, so this has taken some time to get through, but did you think it was beneficial for co-ops in the sense that while you were trying to get this law reform through Parliament, you were discussing some of these issues with government ministers and so on. So did you feel that there was an education of those ministers in terms of them finding out more about cooperatives because there was a process of law reform going on? Can you tell me a little bit about that? Did that happen? And do you think it was beneficial?
Yes, sure. Because, when we talk about the cooperative law reform, and many ministries and officials of the government offices, they don't understand the specific nature of the cooperative. that's why every time we had this enlightening process before that. And even when we are discussing in the working group, because the working group was formed from the lawyers of Parliament of Mongolia and some ministries, the taxation office, and cooperative movement people. So it was a quite diverse group. So when we were discussing the clause by clause, then there are a lot of issues raised during that because they don't understand the nature of the cooperative. So the whole process for me, like being in the working group, was enlightening those people what is the cooperative and who benefits from the cooperative and why cooperatives exist and why we need this specific regulation. So sometimes we should have like kind of a half a day debate on just to put one line in the law. We will have a 1 hour debate, and we had a lot of challenges. We went through a lot of challenges to kind of teach them what is the cooperative and why this regulation is specifically needed for that. Especially, they will ask that, like, for example, when we talk about the taxation, they will ask why cooperatives should be tax exempt when the other business entities, they pay the tax to the government. It's the same. You are doing same business. If you are in agriculture, then the other companies also they are in agriculture. And then we have to explain why and why we need this specific legal reform. So it was a enlightening course for those people. And also it was a big responsibility for us as well. There are so many questions came up to us where even we working in the cooperative sector, we could not explain them properly. And that's why I 2 times came to the Santosh to help me that how to defer certain things and what the other countries' legislations do that. And then Santosh sent us different reports from the different legal research papers. So we also used that one to help us to answer to the questions from the working group members. And coming up to the parliament, it's again, but in the parliament, beforehand, we established our lobby group. So first we taught them about cooperative, and then they kind of influenced to the other members of the parliament. Sorry, you were muted.
Yeah. Yes, I've got it. That's a fascinating point because I was doing some research about the idea that you need a policy champion, like you need somebody who's inside the government to champion the law reform process, no matter what it is. So the idea that you had a group of people that you were taking through and educating so that they could fight for you or lobby for you is really interesting. But I love the idea that the whole process of law reform is also about educating the government ministers so that they understand more about co-ops.
Yes. So it was a long process and not easy, of course. It was a very long and not easy process. And during that time also some ministries and ministers and ministry personnel, they change. So again, we will start from the beginning to talk them and educate them about cooperatives.
My next question is about, you mentioned, and I may have misunderstood you, so just to get some clarification, but the role of peak bodies or the role of secondary and tertiary associations, am I correct in that under the law reform process, it is mandatory for co-ops to belong to a secondary association? Is that the situation under the new law that wasn't there under the existing law? Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't there under the existing law, but it's a new. So really government you know, now it's around 4,600 cooperatives, but if you will see the membership in the professional associations, in the sector associations, then only 1/3 of that cooperatives are members. So means that 2/3 they're out of the movement. So, and somehow, because they're developing themselves on their own, maybe somehow their voices is also missed. You know, and some challenges they face is also missed. The other thing is because government is really, now they really want to support cooperatives. They really need this data on the cooperative and the very, how to say, very updated data. And then we can give only them the data and studies and research on only on our members. But there are a lot of cooperatives which are non-members. And then if government really wants to develop this information system, management and information system for cooperatives, they really need all of them to join the associations. And for government, it's easy to work with the associations where all cooperatives belong, and through the associations they can promote and support cooperatives. So that was the idea behind, and we looked in a different countries cooperative development, and in the beginning stage there is always government support in terms of the policy and also in terms of the business and finance as well. So at the moment, the cooperatives, they're just developing on its own and their growth is not enough, but government sees that in the rural development, the role the cooperatives play is very important. That's why they want all cooperatives to join the national or maybe provincial associations, and through that associations, they want to support cooperatives.
Was there any pushback from the cooperatives themselves? Were there any cooperatives that said, no, we'd rather be independent, we don't want to have to join a secondary association, or were they quite supportive?
They're quite supportive, but you know that our associations, at the moment in Mongolia, we have 5 associations which are actively working. It's in agriculture, consumer cooperative. In the service cooperative sector, they have 2 associations, and then it's a credit union association. But now, you know, new sector in the cooperative is emerging. It's like a transportation cooperatives. They're becoming quite popular in the rural, because traveling between the rural places is the cooperative doing that, which is a very efficient way. So now in many provinces, there is a new transportation cooperatives are emerging frequently. So it's only 5 associations at the moment very actively working at the national level, and maybe we cannot reach all that cooperatives in every corner of Mongolia. That's why like after the cooperative law enforcement, some cooperatives, they just call to our associations and they ask where we locate, what we do. So they never heard about us. So that kind of reactions comes from the cooperatives. But at the moment, no cooperatives say that we don't want to join a secondary association or maybe national associations.
We had a quick chat yesterday about this, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about, we talked about the demographic and how there's a lot of a growing demographic of younger people, but they're perhaps not so inclined to join cooperatives. And I was just wondering whether the law reform process addressed this issue, and if there were any ideas about how younger people might be brought into the cooperative movement.
Yes, but when it's approved, that's not enough, in my opinion, because, like, you know that the Mongolia is a relatively very young country, and Mongolia is a very cold country. In the winter, in the nights, in some places, especially in the high hilly places, we face minus 40 or sometimes over 40 degrees and a lot of snowfalls. And summer is very short, so it's from June to August, but still it's not that warm as many other countries enjoy. So it's a quite a cold country, and we located in a very high level from the sea. So that's why our country longevity is not so high. It's recently increasing, but still, you know, that the longevity rate is not that high compared to the other countries. And then in Mongolia, we think that the people who are under 35 years old, it's a youth. But looking at the demographic features of Mongolia, it's like almost 60% is the people under 35 years old. And then 1/3 of them, it's a youth. So it means that young people from 15 to 34 years old, it's almost 1/3 of the population. So it's a very young country. But if you look at the membership of the cooperatives are quite old organizations. So it's mainly very elderly people, they join, and it doesn't kind of encourage young people to join them. That's why we're doing a lot of advocacy saying that the cooperative training should be, cooperative education should be from the secondary school, so they can learn what is a cooperative, or at least in a higher educational institutions, they should teach about the cooperatives, but we didn't succeed it, unfortunately. But in the future, of course, that, for example, if you go to the universities and the colleges, and then they teach about the companies and corporate businesses, but they don't teach about the cooperative businesses. And then many young professionals, they don't understand what is a cooperative. So they think the cooperative is the organization for the elderly people, or for farmers, or for the vulnerable groups. So it's a very common understanding in Mongolia that cooperatives are not for the educated young people. So this is a very common misunderstanding. That's why we advocating so long that at least in the higher level educational institutions, they should teach cooperative besides the corporate business. So, but we didn't succeed this time, but we touched this upon, but in the future, hopefully, yes, people will understand what is a cooperative. So it's still a challenging issue for us.
It's a challenging issue for all of us, and it's interesting to hear that from you, because I think there's a growing sense, a growing movement around the idea that we really do need to focus on cooperative education in schools and tertiary institutions, so that young people understand the model, because they're only understanding one model at the moment, and yes, that's a problem. Yes. I wanted, and I mean, that takes us to that problem of one size fits all business models. So we talked about, we sometimes say this is a problem of isomorphism, you know, that everything seems to be built on the idea of one business model, the company business model. And clearly you've already touched on a couple of areas where that's an issue in Mongolia. The taxation department doesn't understand the notion of surplus, for example, because presumably nobody in the taxation department learned about cooperatives when they were at university, and yes, why their income should be treated differently. So I just wonder if there are any other areas in Mongolia where other laws, taxation law being a good example, but other laws, like, for example, in agriculture, do you have any difficulties with competition law? Are there any areas of competition?
Yes, because for example, when we talk about the agricultural cooperatives, then we always talk about the fair competition and fair trade as well, because we have quite a lot of number of the middlemen already existing, and very wealthy and rich middlemen already they set on the supply chain, and then they don't let the herders or herder cooperatives or farmer cooperatives to be a part of this supply chain. And that's why we, in our association, we always face the problem with the government bodies, with other associations. So it's a conflict of interests, you know. We always say that the producer organizations or farmer organizations, they're important part of this supply chain and important part of this value chain. But they only look at them as mere producers of the raw materials. But we say them that no, they're main producers of the food, they're main producers of the raw material for the processing factories. So we really fight for this one, and we really fight with this middleman dominated supply chain. And now we are trying to work with the Agricultural Commodity Exchange of Mongolia, which is the government-owned body. So we're really trying that they should treat cooperatives as one of their players. So they should let the cooperatives to come to the exchange, sell their products and go away. Just the ones, because agricultural commodities, they don't, it's not the processing factory that every day they will have the same product. Like in the livestock, spring, you will have a cashmere, which is a goat wool. And then summer, you will have a sheep wool. And then meat comes, and summer is the dairy season. So it's a seasonal products. And we really want that cooperatives, when the cashmere season comes, they collect the cashmere from the herders and then sell in the agricultural commodity exchange and go. It's the easiest way to kind of solve this issue. But at the moment, because the agricultural exchange is not properly working, then the middleman is dominating. So they set between the agricultural cooperatives and processing factories. So, and then they don't let these cooperatives and processing factories to deal with each other. So this chain is broken. That's why, you know, fair trade, fair competition in the agriculture is, at the moment, it's impossible. When there is this wealthy, especially we also face some, you know, international middlemen coming to Mongolia when the cashmere and wool season and meat season comes, because Mongolia is popular for its, you know, natural, organic livestock products. So this international middlemen, they also come from the neighboring countries, and then they buy, and that's why we really kind of fight against this current supply chain, and we really want to treat farmer organizations and agricultural cooperatives as one of the important parts of this chain.
I guess another thing that is related to this process of law reform. So we've sort of moved through a number of different things. We've talked about, you know, the broader context, and then we've talked about particular issues like accounting and taxation, which is sort of nitty-gritty issues, the broader issue of educating people so that they understand the difference, and the importance of the law reform process educating people about co-ops, particularly within the government ministry. And then we've talked about the fact that because we have co-ops are always sort of battling against this one-size-fits-all model, that we have, you know, we come up against problems in things like not only taxation, but competition law and supply chains that we've just talked about. The last area, I guess, that I wanted to hear from you about was your experience. And I guess this is an important thing. It's great when you've achieved law reform. That's really exciting. But you mentioned something to me yesterday about implementation and the difficulties of implementing a new law, particularly in the current situation where we have COVID lockdowns and, not as much access directly to your farming members, for example. So I'd love to hear a little bit from you about, we've thought about, here we have a new law, but what are some of the challenges about implementing a new law that you've experienced?
Yeah, the first challenge, that the implementation is not only, we need to promote the law not only among our members and the cooperative members, also we need to promote it to the local authorities and government offices as well. Like you said, to the taxation office, we should promote that what changes were made in our law, and due to our law, what amendments were done to the taxation law, and how we should explain it, how you should implement this law in practice. And then the other thing is also, most probably we can do it in the end of this month via online, that we also need to educate the people who work in the state registration offices across the country, because they are who register and dissolve the cooperatives. And then the registration and dissolvement of the cooperatives, we also made quite a few changes, because also in Mongolia we face that some fake cooperatives, and I talked especially in the agriculture sector, we have this middleman, and then we try to avoid this middleman, or kind of the government also takes some measures to quit this middleman businesses. Then they start to establish a cooperative. So we call them, it's a very fake cooperative. It's a kind of a one-person owned, but herders, they don't know, so they kind of becomes victims of this. That's why we really want to start the promotion and implementation of our law from the registration office and from the registrars who are across the country. In Mongolia, we don't have this special nominated cooperative registrar. So there is only one person who does the registration of all entities and organizations. And that's why we will start from them. And then we will try to teach them that the specific features of the cooperative, and when they will register a cooperative, how they should look and differ is it a fake cooperative or real cooperative by the initiative of the real people, or is it just one person who just used names of that people and establishing a cooperative for his own sake? So we will start from them. And then, of course, we will try to reach the taxation office and Ministry of Finance. And as I told you yesterday, we really want the new accounting regulation for the cooperatives, where they can show the specific business of the cooperative. And that's, of course, going to be quite challenging again, because it's always very difficult to deal with the taxation office and Ministry of Finance. But it's in the resolution of the Parliament of Mongolia when they passed the cooperative law. In the resolution, it says that the Ministry of Finance should lead this accounting and taxation reform also for the cooperatives. So we will also try to work with the taxation office. And then, of course, region-wise, we will start to promote our law among the cooperatives. We started from the Western region, but, involvement of the people via online is quite challenging again for us. So, but still we are trying. And when we start the promotion is also, we are trying to involve as much as possible the governors of the villages and provinces, the persons who are in charge of the SME and cooperative, and also the people who are working closely with the cooperative movement. So it's going to be maybe a long process, but we started from the Western region, and in the beginning of the next month, we are targeting to go to the Eastern region if this pandemic situation will allow us then we will going to organize quite a big event in the eastern part of Mongolia to promote new law. And then a lot of online, of course, the workshops and meetings. And also now we are preparing a new manual for the new law. So it's not, we are not only going to print out the law, but we are trying to explain what is in the new law and how it should be implemented on the ground. And then we are trying to explain in a very simple language where everybody can understand. So that's what we are doing at the moment. But implementation is, of course, it's difficult.
Thank you so much, Altantuya. It's been very, very interesting talking to you. And there are many, many countries around the world that are looking at reviewing their legislation. You know, right now we know quite a few countries that have, sort of started this process. And I think that there's lots in what you're saying to our audience that is quite heartening. Perhaps even the fact that it takes as long as it does to do the job properly, I think is something that that everyone needs to understand. You know, that the process takes a great deal of patience and hard work and commitment. So I'm just wondering, as a takeaway message, what is your takeaway for those people who are involved in cooperatives in different countries around the world who are just beginning this process? What would you say to them?
I really would like to say them that, of course, every country has their own, very specific, their own problems and own issues. But first of all, you have to look for your own issues and problems that the cooperative sector face. Second, I think that international legislation research papers are very handy. So we really, you know that the International Labor Organization, they have this guideline for the cooperative legislation. So we read that one a lot. And then there is also the legal committee of the ICA. You have a lot of studies and some reports and research papers. So we also went through them a lot. So I think this comparing with the different countries' legislations and how they regulate a certain issue is very important, because we don't want to make mistakes. And maybe sometimes we do certain regulations and then it will not work. Then it will be a big issue for the movement. For the next amendment or the reform, it will take again a long time. So that's why I really want to say that you have to look the different countries' legislations. We looked for the Japan one, for the Korea, and then we looked for this Dr. Henry Hagen's research papers. And then we also had the online meeting with Dr. Tseden-Ish, who is located in the USA, and he also was a professional, worked on the Central Asian countries' cooperative legislation. Especially, he worked with the former USSR countries' cooperative legislation. So we also consulted with him. So consultation with the different legal experts gave us quite a good ideas. And then in some cases, it was also our mistakes. And then during the process of drafting a new law, we changed the initial draft. When we submitted the initial draft, I think the final draft is almost again 50–60% has changed. So it's a long process, and be very patient, and then you will succeed. It took us more than 12 years.
Yeah. I think it's a good lesson. I think that the process needs to be an ongoing one almost, doesn't it? Because
Yes.
if it takes you another 12 years, you'll be due again by the time that you get there.
So that's why we tried to learn from the other countries' legislations a lot.
That's fantastic. I've so much enjoyed listening to your story tonight, and I've learned a lot from you. I know a lot more now about Mongolia and Mongolian cooperative law, and it seems to me that a lot of the problems that you faced are shared problems, which is really interesting. They're all around the globe. So we have much to learn from you, and we're very delighted to have this chance to have a conversation with you. So thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for inviting me for this, your maybe very first interview. So thank you. And I would say that when situation in the world comes down, then please welcome to Mongolia. And we are very happy to show you around and to show you also our cooperatives.